will be just a joke to you!
The Spot was once one of Spider-Man's joke villains. Really way down at the bottom. Maybe not exactly at Big Wheel in the Wall territory, but the character got no respect. He didn't even really respect himself. Seriously, whether it was in comics or the few adaptations he does have, he was just a joke, a bumbling fool of an idiot. But all that changed when Across the Spiderverse came out and established a brand new A-list villain for Spider-Man. Yeah, I said it, the Spot is now an A-lister villain. That movie made like $500 million. There's no way he's not an A-list villain at this point. This movie is simply brilliant. What it does to the Spot is phenomenal. The way they recontextualize the Spot and use him being a joke and getting no respect as motivation for the character to actually become a threat, so masterfully done. Spider-Man has so many A-list villains that it's hard for a new character to crack into the upper echelons. Look at his best villains. These guys are known far and wide, and it makes sense why. They freaking rock, but they've also been around forever. The Spot, he's newer. Pretty newer when it comes compared to these classic guys. The Spot was a bench player, while these guys, they're starters and all-star caliber players. What makes Spot different from all the other Spider-Man joke villains, what separates him from the other water boy, bench warmer-esque villains, is his power set is ridiculously strong. He can go from universe to universe. Compare that with characters like The Wall, who's just a freaking wall. You almost scratch your head. Why wasn't the Spot repurposed earlier? What took so long for this dimension-hopping villain who's a literal scientist, so we know he's smart, to be seen as an actual threat? This video, my goal is to break down exactly why it took the Spot so long for him to be seen as a threat, you know, as an actual challenge to Spider-Man. To do that, I'll go over his comics, his other adaptations, and why exactly Spider-Verse managed to be the first adaptation to make the character a potential A-list villain, baby. But before I start this video, I need to know, why do you guys think Spot took so long to be recontextualized into a Spider-Man nemesis? What took so long for this character to be a big bad? Let me know down below. Let's jump into this. Spot in the comics isn't a super serious guy. Spot first appears in Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man in '98. He's a pretty goofy guy. The man known as Dr. Ohm was trying to look into duplicating Cloak's, yeah, you know, that Cloak,
Score one for Ty.
powers. Kingpin had tasked him with trying to duplicate Dagger's powers, but his machine didn't have enough of a read to emulate her abilities. You see, Kingpin's wife was in need of drastic medical attention, and Kingpin felt like Dagger's powers were the only way to cure his wife's ailment. However, he doesn't have the ability to do so. They didn't get enough of a read of Dagger's powers. So Dr. Ohm tries to go in and take on this impossible task of duplicating Dagger's powers, and he finds that there's a lot of Cloak's powers in here that the machine did read. Dr. Ohm looks into Cloak's powers more, and this caused the machine to be overused and actually release a mini-contained black hole. Dr. Ohm, for some reason, steps inside this black hole, literally insane, makes no sense. I thought he was a scientist. He just went to a black hole with no gear or safety equipment. Unbelievable. But inside this black hole, Dr. Ohm finds a polka dot dimension filled with spots. Upon trying to leave, the spots actually gravitate to his body and form onto himself, thus creating the Spot. The Spot would go out and try his powers, and he actually manages to beat Spider-Man on his first encounter. The more you read about everybody's first encounter with Spider-Man, it feels like they all beat him on their first encounter, because Spider-Man really, he gets his lick back in the second encounter. But in his first encounter, when he does beat Spider-Man, he's goofing it up the whole way. This guy's such a goofy goofball. Like I said before, they would fight again, and then this time around, Spider-Man would actually manage to make the Spot overuse his powers, which allowed Spider-Man to literally deck this dude in his face and then cause Spot to retreat through a hole, in which he gets a stern talking to from Spider-Man in there. And that's really it for the comic book Spot. He's a pretty goofy character. He's definitely not serious. He's also wasn't really a dimensional hopper in his first appearance either. He would like go into the Spot dimension and then come back out in 616. He wasn't a dimension walker. He was just like almost teleporting, sort of. Quick note, I also think it's wild that Cloak actually had a hand in the creation of the Spot. That's so sick. I love when characters outside of Spider-Man's mythos actually have a hand in helping aid in Spider-Man's mythos. Now, the Spot has been adapted a whopping 3 times ever. Once in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, once in the 2017 Spider-Man cartoon, and then finally he was adapted in Across the Spider-Verse. The 2017 Spot quite literally just grunts. Doesn't really even speak. Next to no characterization. This is for sure the worst version of the Spot. He's just like there doing stuff for no rhyme or reason. And then he loses a fight to Anya on her literal first day as a superhero. And that's it. That's his whole story. He appears in another episode, but he's really just, again, not doing anything. So you know what we can do? We can put the 2017 Spot away and just not talk about it anymore. Because it's trash. Nothing to talk about here. Let's talk about an actual adaptation of the Spot, the 90s show. This is a phenomenal adaptation of the Spot. Just simply perfect right out of the comics. Dr. Ohm works for Kingpin. While working for Kingpin, he accidentally becomes the Spot, with the ability to create dimensional wormholes with the thought. He tries to hide this from the Kingpin for as long as he can, but eventually, the Kingpin finds out and tries to exploit it. His character is literally ripped right out of the comics. He's still timid, he's still goofy, he's not very sure of himself. He has his first encounter with Spider-Man and he's throwing out glib and quips the entire time, just like the comics. This show is really good. It's really such an accurate retelling of the character, straight up out of the comics. It's so well done. So well done. But the last Spot adaptation we're going to talk about today is his most recent one, and I'm not joking when I say this. This adaptation completely changes how I view adaptations. In Across the Spiderverse, Spot is literally him. He's him. He is so freaking amazing. He starts off similar to the comic. He works for Kingpin and he becomes a Spot while working for him. In the beginning of Across the Spiderverse, Spot is still very much what you'd expect him to be from the comics. He's not very powerful, he's not very strong, he doesn't really know what he's doing yet or even what he wants to do. As Spider-Man would say, he's a villain of the week. And this is literally what Spot was prior to this film. Just a villain of the week. But then this movie writes Spot's story as a rising to the challenge storyline. And the challenge is being Spider-Man's nemesis. He's not just a villain of the week. If you want to roast him and downplay him all you want, you're just going to motivate him more to try to destroy you. The way this character is written, it turns Spot from a joke villain,
With me, we'll finally have a villain worth fighting. And I won't be just a joke to you!
into a legit nemesis for Spider-Man. And it does such a good job at doing so. But this leads me to a question. Why is Spot only now being shown like this? If the character has been around for decades and could always dimension hop, why was he such a joke before? Yet now he can be written so terrifyingly. To me, I believe this is because the way society has changed with the multiverse's understanding. Back when Spot was created, there wasn't really many universes. At least the idea of these shows and stories all being their separate universes, it wasn't explored before. You had the 60s Spider-Man show, then you had the 80s Spider-Man show, you got Amazing Friends Spider-Man show, and then you have the 90s Spider-Man show. These are all technically their own universes, correct? They're all their own universes featuring Spider-Man and a Spider-Man storyline within them. But that's not how they were viewed back in the day. They were just viewed as their own stories, right? The 60s show ended. Okay, well now there's Amazing Friends. Amazing Friends and 80s ran concurrently. They both ended. Okay, well now there's the 90s show. The 90s show ended. Okay, well now let's do Spider-Man Unlimited. That ended. Let's do TNAS. That's how it worked back in the day. Nobody was out here making these other stories, thinking of them as their own dimensions. It was oh, well, this is just be a new story. This will be my story about Spider-Man. And that's how it was seen at the time. But with how many forms of media are now consumed, the idea of all these being separate universes has come to the forefront. Whereas before, you could have had Spot jump into 3 different dimensions, right? If Spot first appeared in the 90s show, where's he jump into? He could jump into the live action Hammond version. He can jump into 3 cartoons. And he can jump into the Japanese Toei Spider-Man version. That's 5 different universes. That's it. And I guess the comic universe, so 6. Nowadays, it's quite literally infinite. I don't think you can even name enough universes that Spider-Man appears in. It's literally infinite because someone could just come up with a new universe and then you got more. It's never ending. Spot was written like a joke villain when he was created because being able to dimension hop wasn't really scary back then. All it really meant was that Spot could go into a portal and come out somewhere else. But now that the multiverse is a popularized theory, and now that there's God knows how many different universes in which Spot could jump to, he becomes a way scarier character. And Across the Spider-Verse alone, Spot is just jumping around universes like it's nothing. Universes that we all have seen. And it's it's nothing because all this stuff already exists. They didn't have to create any of this stuff for this storyline to make sense. If you know anything about Spider-Man, you already know all this stuff. In this film, Spot jumps into a classic comic dimension. He jumps into the Venom universe. He jumps into the Lego universe. Heck, he even jumps into the universe in which India's Spider-Man resides. All of these are already existing universes. We've already known about these. Classic Comics, everybody knows about Classic Comics. That's obviously its own universe, 616. Or you could do newspaper comic strips. Either one, it works. The Venom franchise, this franchise has grossed over $1 billion. The Lego franchise easily grossed over $1 billion as well. Then you have Spider-Man India, who appeared in the first ever Spider-Verse storyline, so he's been around for over a decade as well. When you put all this together, you can have a nice, well thought out storyline in which the Spot is being terrifying, going from universe to universe to universe, and you don't even have to make up any of these universes. We already know they exist nowadays. Due to the multiverse being a more prevalent thing in our society, Spot's allowed to be written as a significantly scarier and more intimidating villain. Spot is literally the perfect Spider-Verse villain, and this makes me question what makes the perfect adaptation. Is an adaptation good because it's incredibly accurate to the source material? I personally used to believe this was how you made the perfect adaptation, making it similar to the source material, making it as close to the source material as possible. The Spot and Spider-Verse are the first adaptations that have ever made me seriously realize how much better an adaptation can be, even just completely removing all ties to the source material. Spot in the comics was goofy for sure, but Spider-Verse shows how he could be considered way more of a threat, and then the comics have since agreed and started going with this notion as well. That's how you know it's so goddamn good. And this isn't like brain dead movie synergy we all hate, right? Like making Kamala Khan an X-Men. That's stupid. That's not changing the game. That's just like, you made her an X-Men in the movie, so now everybody who reads comics has to suffer. Nobody likes that. It's more like Magneto. You probably didn't even know this, but Magneto originally in the comics, his helmet doesn't actually block telepathy. Professor X would shoot him down with telepathy beams all the time. You could watch the original X-Men cartoon, and in the third episode, or second episode, I believe it's the third episode, Professor X just shoots beams and projections of the Holocaust to Magneto, causing him to leave while Magneto has his helmet on. It wasn't actually until the live-action films came out they wrote it that Magneto couldn't get hit with telepathy if he has his helmet on. And you know what the comics did? They said, shit, that makes so much sense. Why did we not think of that? And they put it in and everybody loved it. Because it makes sense. It's the same thing with Spot. The Spot just makes sense as a Spider-Verse villain, right? Nobody in the entirety of the Spider-Verse has the ability to just jump from dimension to dimension. What they need is they need to create technology in order to do so. Having a villain that can inherently just do this makes perfect sense. He seems like the villain for the Spider-Verse, no? But then we're looking at it on the flip side. Spider-Verse as an adaptation makes you realize the Spider-Verse comics are fucking terrible. The villain of the Spider-Verse comics is a family of spider-eating multiversal vampires with zero characterization or personality. They're just mindless, hungry vampires, essentially. That's terrible. That's so stupid. I'm so grateful the movies that adapted this storyline chose to just get rid of this garbage nonsense. Who wants to read this? Plus, the first Spider-Verse event had Silk and Spider-Man like trying to have sex with each other constantly because of the pheromones they released. Imagine that was in the first Spider-Verse film. It would be awful. Thank God the first Spider-Verse film isn't adapted faithfully, because the Spot and the Spider-Verse films as a whole are so much better off for it. They're so much better off without trying to emulate what the comics did. Across the Spider-Verse Spot is freaking phenomenal. Spider-Man's newest A-list villain definitely deserves his spot. Get it? Because I said Spot. Anyways, that's about it for me in this video. If you enjoyed this video, you should leave a like down below, comment, make sure you let me know what you thought of this video. I appreciate all of you guys watching, especially if you made it to this part of the video. If you want to talk to me more, feel free to join me in my Discord. I'll put the Discord link in my description below. If you have the means, you should support the Patreon. I really would appreciate it. If you can, I ain't gonna hate though. I appreciate you all. I think that's it for me in this video though. Dunk out. Peace!